What's going on through your mind right now?
As flies to wanton boys, we are for the gods.
They kill us for the...
Yo, what's he going on about? I don't know, bro. This is classic Cantona. Just clap.
I love football. Thank you.
What in the... You know what? In a strange way, that it kind of made sense, you know?
Thank you, Eric.
When you think of the word enigma, what comes to mind? The Riddler from Batman, maybe? The offsides rule, perhaps? Or maybe even YouTube's decision to remove the dislike count? Whatever it is that you're thinking of, Eric Cantona should, without a doubt, be right up there. Over the course of this man's career in football and indeed his life following that line of work, the man has made a habit of making confusing public remarks, having disciplinary issues, putting up iconic performances, subverting our expectations, and then just straight up leaving. From professional footballer to theatrical actor, director and producer to Manchester United manager?
Hello my friends, I would like to tell you in exclusivity that I am the new manager of Manchester United. See you soon.
Leaving football aside, the man truly has one of the most unique stories you'll ever come across. But when it does come to football, behind all of the theatrics and sensational headlines lays a man of immense mental fortitude, an unruly winning mentality, and a ruthless work ethic. A king amongst men. Today, we're going to briefly dive into the life and times of King Eric to get a better understanding of how he came to be who he is, and what exactly made him one of the most interesting figures in recorded football history. So, without further ado, how good was Eric Cantona? Hello friends, hope you're all doing well and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. If you leave a like, literally nothing will happen, but I'll be pretty chuffed, so it's really up to you, I guess. Alright, let's jump right in. There are two Eric Cantonas, l'un qui existait et l'un qui s'exprimait, the man himself and the man who talks. Do you see what I mean? Words spoken by Michel Platini when describing Cantona, a man of both words and actions. Even before Eric Cantona was born in Marseille in 1966, a life of turbulence and variety had already been laid out for him due to a rather unique family history. His grandfather on his father's side was of Italian descent and emigrated to Marseille from Sardinia. His grandfather on his mother's side was of Spanish descent and served as an officer in the Spanish Republican Army. After receiving a nasty injury, he fled to France to seek medical attention. And so, Eric Cantona emerged alongside his two brothers. They would play football with their father, and eventually young Eric would join his local football club and blow all of his peers out the water in terms of sheer ability. When speaking about Cantona back in 1994, the president of the club he played at said he had all the qualities of a player. At 9, he was already playing like a 15-year-old. When he was with us, we won lots of tournaments, and I can honestly say that he alone made the difference. And when further questioned on what Cantona was like as a 9-year-old, he simply said, exactly as he is today. Hot-headed, but a genius. He's always been his own man. I guess that the highs, lows, and bizarre events that occurred as time went by weren't all that surprising to those that knew him in the early days. And speaking of those events, the young attacker's early career was jam-packed with them. Position-wise, his style and positioning mostly resembled that of a secondary striker, behind the main striker but in front of the 10. It was here that he could use his strength, technique, and vision to make sparks fly in attack. He was clearly talented. Anyone blessed with eyesight could see it. But his ill discipline and fiery temper ultimately proved to be his downfall just about wherever he played within his native country. The boy was wild. First up was Auxerre, starting in 1983 at just 17 years of age, his first professional club. Even before making his debut as a professional, he was regularly getting into fights with opposing defenders and being lectured by referees. Football was significantly more physical than it is now, so it's likely that this wasn't a big deal back then. He once even got into a fist fight outside the changing rooms following a match against Cournon-Lessandre in 1985 after getting an opposing centre-back sent off. I'm not entirely sure who won, but I'll give Eric the benefit of the doubt here. In any case, he was performing nonetheless. His goals even helped Auxerre to qualify for the UEFA Cup with a goal in the final match of the 1985-86 season. However, in the same vein, he was also once fined for punching his own goalkeeper in the face, giving him a black eye. And he was also given a 3-month suspension for this. Now, if you want my opinion, I really don't know what these guys are arguing about. He clearly got the ball. This dude's really rolling on the floor after such a soft challenge. Game's gone, I swear. And all of this was before Cantona's 21st birthday, by the way. Regardless, the man was more talented than he was ill-disciplined. Otherwise, many probably wouldn't have found him worth the drama. He played a key role in winning the Under-21 UEFA Euros with France in 1988 and even earned a move to Marseille in the same year. He did support them as a child, so perhaps this would be a turning point in his career. Spoiler alert, it was not. Here's a quick-fire rundown of his initial stint in Marseille. He helped Marseille win the first division in his first season with them, but that was probably one of the minor events from that year as he only spent half a season there. He called the manager of the French national team a shitbag on live television after he was not selected for a friendly against Czechoslovakia. In a match against Torpedo Moscow, he kicked the ball into the crowd and threw his shirt at the referee in frustration after being subbed off. The match was a charity friendly. He was binned by Marseille owner Bernard Tapie as he proclaimed that Cantona would never play for the club again after this incident. This guy was such a loose cannon, it's almost unbelievable. He was then sent out on loan to Bordeaux and then Montpellier, where even more craziness occurred. While at Montpellier, he threw his boot at fellow teammate Jean-Claude Lemoult after he berated Cantona's performance following a loss to Lille in the league. Somehow, he was not cut loose from the club following this incident and even played a key role as Montpellier won the Coupe de France in 1990. As a matter of fact, he was playing so well for them that Marseille decided to give him another chance. For a short while, it seemed as though he had exercised his demons and was ready to reach the potential that so many knew he could. He put up a string of good performances in the league as Marseille reclaimed the first division title, scoring 9 goals in 21 appearances overall. Good stuff from Cantona, right? While that may be true, you may be forgetting just one thing. He was a wild boy. More fights with the Marseille backroom management and a transfer to Nîmes at the end of the 1990-91 season. And after being summoned to a disciplinary hearing with the French Football Federation for throwing a ball at a referee, he called each member of the hearing committee an idiot, one by one, straight to their faces. This term is thrown around a lot, so perhaps it's lost some of its meaning, but this man truly was a savage. And after all that, Cantona decided that he had had enough of it all. Constantly at ends with his teammates and upper management, unable to express himself in the way he wanted to. Maybe football wasn't the answer. In 1990, at the age of just 25, he announced his retirement from football, cancelling his contract with Nîmes. But as we all know, even though he may have thought he was done with football, football was not done with him just yet. Many people still believed he had greatness within him. Two people who shared that sentiment were Michel Platini, the French manager at the time, and Gérard Houllier, another immense figure in the history of French football. Following their advice, he decided to attempt to revive his career. His next destination, Leeds United, England. This is where things start to get interesting when it comes to the reported story of Eric Cantona. If you look back and read stories about his exploits before his move to England, as well as just listen to what you've already seen in this video thus far, all you'll hear about are his antics. His playing ability essentially forms a side story in the narrative. Although he retained both sides of his fiery persona, it was from this point onwards that his ability became the main talking point, with his antics taking the supporting role. Another thing to note is that Cantona arrived in England at a time when non-British players were extremely few and far between. I mean, just look at the Leeds squad in his first season at the club. Not much in the way of international diversity. I guess the man just needed a change of scenery because he more or less hit the ground running following his emigration to Ellen Road halfway through the 91-92 season. Despite being an attacker, his game wasn't just about goals. He was much more than that. An immense presence that added a significant amount to Leeds. As a matter of fact, he helped them win the first division title immediately upon his arrival. Now, here's a fun fact. Although he spent about a year at Leeds, he didn't actually stay with them for even one full season. He arrived at the midway point of one and departed at the same stage the next year. The following year was, of course, the inaugural season of the Premier League. And before you ask, yes, this is indeed when football began. A glorious year for sure. And that year started off well too, but eventually Leeds were unable to maintain their winning ways and failed to put up a fight over the course of the season, ultimately finishing in 17th place. There were many reasons for this. One of the main ones was undoubtedly the addition of European football to their weekly schedule. The fatigue surely took its toll. Add on to that the fact that Cantona fell out with yet another manager in Howard Wilkinson, and a transfer request must not have surprised many of the internal staff at the time. The fans, however, were not happy at losing one of their star men, and if that wasn't bad enough, his destination was heated rivals Manchester United. Now that is spicy. £1.2 million later, and Old Trafford was now Cantona's home. Interestingly, apparently United did not do any background checks on Cantona before signing him. To be fair, background checks weren't really done back then at all. At least not in the way that they're done now, or at least not in the way that they should be done. Instead, Ferguson and the United decision-makers made their choice based on what they had seen while he was at Leeds, as well as the opinions of United's centre-backs at the time, Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister. Luckily, it all worked out in the end, the details of which we'll get to in a little bit. United is, of course, the team that most people associate Eric Cantona with when they refer to his career in football. He never had much luck with the French national team for one reason or another over his career, and although he had won league titles with Marseille and Leeds, he either did not assimilate smoothly into the team or didn't stay around for too long. For the most part, all of this was because of poor discipline. Contrasting that with his time in England and the majority of the quotes you'll come across and anecdotes you'll hear about for his time in Manchester all speak about his immense stature, presence and work rate. None of us really realized how big he was at the time. He was a man mountain and had the presence where if he walked into a room, everyone turned around. He had an aura. It's all very good having an aura and eccentricity, but you have to play too, and he really could. For someone so big, he had balance, technique, pace, power and heading. He had a bit of the lot. The words of Steve Bruce when recounting Cantona's days at United. He just had that aura and presence. He took responsibility away from us. It was like he said, "I'm Eric, and I'm here to win the title for you." The words of Paul Ince. When he joined United, they were essentially fighting a losing battle in the Prem against formidable teams at the time in Aston Villa and Blackburn Rovers. Despite having a solid squad with the likes of Peter Schmeichel, Dennis Irwin.
Dennis was an 8 out of 10 most weeks, outstanding. And always fit.
Brian Robson and Mark Hughes, among others, United were struggling to find goals. Cantona stepped in, banged in 9 goals and made 11 assists in 22 appearances and gave the team a huge lift in confidence and energy. The first ever Premier League title was Manchester United's, and theirs alone. And despite how much the narrative has changed over the years and how many stories have come out regarding this title win, a significant portion of those who either watched or reviewed this season point towards the arrival of Cantona as the driving force for this iconic victory. Prior to joining United, he had played for 7 clubs in 7 years. Instability was the norm. However, all of a sudden, that seemed to be a thing of the past, and he wasn't done just yet. Collar turned up, back straight, chest stuck out. Eric glided into the arena as if he owned the place. Roy Keane. Over the next 4 years, he won the Premier League 3 more times. He turned his collar up and became the king. He won 2 FA Cups while scoring crucial goals in both finals. He got 3rd place in the 1993 Ballon d'Or. He kung fu kicked someone in the crowd. He was handed the Manchester United captaincy. He won numerous Player of the Season awards.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Okay. So one of those was not like the others. So remember earlier when I said he won 3 out of 4 Premier League titles after 93? It's probably no coincidence that the season that they lost it was also the only season in Cantona's tenure at United when he did not play for an extended period. So why did he miss these matches, you ask? 25th of January 1995. Man United are away at Crystal Palace, and throughout the match, Palace defender Richard Shaw had essentially become Cantona's shadow. By the 49th minute mark, Cantona had had enough and kicked out at Shaw, resulting in an inevitable sending off. And then, all of a sudden, Cantona launched into a flying kick directed towards a crowd member and began throwing hands at the man after that.
Oh, what's going on here? Cantona's getting involved with some supporters. Oh, this is outrageous.
Everyone was shocked. What on earth had just happened? So this obviously doesn't excuse his behavior, but apparently the crowd member had left his seat and ran down about 11 rows of seats to scream abuse at Cantona. Excuse my French, but the fans' words were apparently along the lines of "Fuck off back to France, you French bastard." He said it in English, but again, mind my French, please. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's pretty difficult to feel sorry for this guy. Cantona was fined £30,000, a significant amount for footballers back then. He was initially sentenced to 2 weeks in prison on assault, a ruling which was later toned down to 120 hours of community service, and he was banned from football for 8 months. A week after his community service ruling, he gave possibly the greatest response to a mob of journalists that a professional footballer has done in the history of ever. Dude just rocked up and said, "When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea." Thank you very much. That's the entire press conference, by the way. He just got up, said that, and left. I can only imagine how the internet would have responded to this if it existed at the time. In the 1996-97 season, Cantona became the United captain as they won the league again. This season was memorable for United and Cantona for many reasons, but two in particular. Firstly, one of the most iconic celebrations in Premier League history. This emphatic pose after scoring a fantastic chip versus Sunderland. And second, Cantona announced his retirement from football at the end of it. He was only 30. With 11 goals and 12 assists in this season, he wasn't showing any signs of slowing down. So what gives? Well, I guess the answer to that is pretty simple. He was tired. Years later, when speaking on his second retirement, he said this: "When you quit football, it is not easy. Your life becomes difficult. I should know because sometimes I feel I quit too young. I love the game, but I no longer had the passion to go to bed early, not to go out with my friends, not to drink, and not to do a lot of other things, the things I like in life." Fair enough. And just like that, he was gone. Following his career, he went on to do so many things: act, produce, coach, and play beach soccer, winning the Beach Soccer World Cup and Euros, among other accolades. But to very many people, none of that stuff comes to mind when thinking of King Eric. When you think of French players that have graced world football over the years, you may think of the likes of Zinedine Zidane, Thierry Henry, Michel Platini, the list goes on. But Cantona was deservedly right up there, and he probably had all of them beat when it came to charisma. And you can bet that he was well aware of his powers. Following his career, when asked who he thought was the best French footballer between Zidane and Platini, he simply said, "No, it is me." Legend. And there we have it. A brief look at the life and times of the incomparable Eric Cantona. What do you all think of the man? How do you think he would fare in today's game with such a personality and attitude? Comment all your thoughts below. Anyway, really hope you all enjoyed that one. That's all from me today. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.